Good afternoon and welcome back to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at Market Site is Mario Natarelli. He's Managing Director, MBLM. Try saying that on a Friday, right?
Yeah, I know the problem.
We are talking about the Brand Intimacy Report for 2018. These are one of my favorite reports to cover. And you recently released the 2018 study. What were some of the key findings?
Well, it's great to be back. And I think what's interesting about this year is Apple continues to dominate. Amazon is closing in, and I think in the future, I suspect Amazon will overtake them. There's every year interesting surprises. Jeep is number 4 this year. YouTube did extremely well, rose up from 14 to 6, and Google made the top 10 for the first time.
Well, in the report overall, it shows the media and entertainment industry ranked first for the first time.
Yeah, taking over automotive. People love their cars, but it seems like in these days of desire to maybe remove themselves from the daily news cycle, people are turning to media and entertainment more. I also think with millennials and Gen Z, people are interested in experiences over things, and maybe that's another reason why it's happening.
Were there any other surprises in the auto industry this year?
I think Jeep is probably the biggest surprise. It does better with women than men, surprisingly.
Oh, what is that?
And that's been confirmed from executives at Jeep that we've talked to. So we think it's one of the brands where over 50% of the users are actually intimate with it. It's also another example of a brand that's more utilitarian, maybe a little more basic.
Let's go back and talk about Apple again. Smartphone is really what's driving that brand.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. What we've learned is that if you're a brand within the smartphone ecosystem, you generally do better than brands that are outside of it. And most of the manufacturer brands get most of the credit for the smartphone, the magic of the smartphone. So Apple leads the way, followed by Samsung and LG and Sony and others. But basically, the hardware manufacturers do better.
Are you surprised to see that luxury continues to struggle? Why is that?
Yeah, it's a real paradox. These are such iconic brands, and yet they're not forming intimate bonds with their consumers. I think it's maybe twofold. One, people can live without them. And I think that's a big piece of why you're intimate with a brand. Can you live without it? And I think with luxury brands, maybe you can. And I think maybe it's speaking to a wider societal desire to maybe simplify life.
Right, even going back to the utilitarian theme,
right, exactly.
Where maybe having a $5,000 purse isn't. Maybe you want to put your $5,000 on an experience or something like that.
Present company excluded, of
right,
course.
well, there you go. So to wrap up, what advice do you have for companies looking to establish strong brand intimacy?
Well, first, I think the role of emotion and what it plays in brands is really important. So I think it's important to know what role it plays in your brands and how you measure it. I think it's also really important that you look at all the bonds that you're forming with all your stakeholders, internal and external. Measure them and then understand how to improve them and make them stronger.
All right. Well, thank you, as always, for joining me at
My
Market
pleasure.
Site. And thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.